What is humanism? Humanism was the renewed belief of the value and power of the individual. Throughout the Middle Ages, the general concept of man's place in the universe was one of obedience. People were expected to live their lives, worship God, and they were asked by the church to earn their way into heaven by following the sacraments and through good works, which in the 14th century, intellectuals began to question this purely religious view of life on earth. They studied the classical languages of Greek and Latin in order to read the wisdom of writers from ancient world, when suddenly all the ideas of ancient writers become available to a whole new audience of the Western world. Ancient values such as civic virtue become subjects of conversation, and as more people started reading these texts, the demand for giving an education increased. Wealthy families began to support the schools and send their children to schools to learn Greek and Latin to gain access to ancient ideas, making humanism a strong movement that consisted of these two core beliefs: individualism and secularism, which supports the idea of being independent and live to worship yourself, while following religious beliefs and without discriminating anybody in the name of religion, and ensuring the freedom of an individual, erasing from the map the ignorance and oppression that of the citizens during the Middle Ages to start a new era. The creation of Adam has a meaning and features that represent the time of the Renaissance, in which, as we can see, there's a relationship between the Catholic idea of God and the idea of an individual itself, with more freedom to believe whatever he desires to believe, not like in the Middle Ages that there were knights sent to the towns that didn't follow the Catholic religion. Michelangelo Buonarroti was born the 6th of March of 1475 in Caprese. Known worldwide as a painter, sculptor, architect, and poet, when he was a child, his father punished him for painting instead of doing his homework. He never changed his mind, so this took him in 1488 to a painter's workshop, to be exact, Domenico Ghirlandaio's workshop, which is a painter that has contributed in the decoration of the Sistine Chapel, whom Michelangelo later said that all he learned was thanks to him. Some years later, the works of Michelangelo started to get the admiration of Lorenzo of Medici, or also known as the Magnific, member from one of the most powerful families in Italy and one of the richest men in Europe, which helped him become what he's now remembered for. Lorenzo opened a sculpting school in his backyard in which Michelangelo assisted, and one day he was sculpting the head of a faun, and as a way to criticize, he said, "How can such an old faun have a perfect jaw?" Michelangelo grabbed the hammer and broke some of the faun's teeth. Lorenzo, impressed by Michelangelo, started to order him some of his works in exchange for living in his palace. 3 years in Lorenzo's palace being taught by the masters of humanism of that time, Lorenzo died and there was a rebellion in Florence against the members of the Medici family, so he escaped, but when he came back, he started with the making of the David, the most famous sculpture in the world. As I said before, Michelangelo is known for being a painter, sculptor, architect, and poet, but mainly people will only know Michelangelo by being a painter and a sculptor. Apart from that, he, as an architect, has been responsible for many designs across Italy, like the St. Peter's Basilica, Laurentine Library, Palazzo Sanatorio, Segrestia Nuova, and many more. As a poet, he has written over 300 poems, such as Celestial Love, Joy May Kill, Dante, The Doom of Beauty, or To Exile, in which he can be seen painting in the Sistine Chapel. These are some of the other things that he did that were significant too. The creation of Eve. There's a naked man sleeping against a cotton tree, and Eve, naked too, is discussing to a tall and all-barefoot man with a long white beard, covering himself with a robe. It can be seen that they're discussing something due to the way Eve is using her hands to talk to the man, including that she bends down her back to let the audience know that the conversation that they're having is something of importance. This painting represents the creation of the first woman. Moses. This is the most important sculpture of the tomb of Pope Julius II, in which we can see a strong man due to the shocking muscles he has, but sitting on a throne, not an active position, and which lets us know the power that this individual possesses, while holding two books with his right arm. His left foot is pulling backwards with his hips facing to the left, but with his very long beard on the right, including his head and eyes that face to the left where his attention comes from. Bacchus. He is the Roman god of wine. Sculpted as in a state of drunkenness, we can predict those symptoms by the tilted position of his right leg, body, and neck. Bacchus holds a goblet that contains the wine that he's drinking, that as we can observe, his eyes and lips are pointing at it, like if he was going to take another shot of the drink. Behind him, he has one of his satyrs, which is the Greek word for an attendee of gods. The creation of Adam can be seen in the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Florence, but also where you can find masterpieces from different artists like Sandro Botticelli, Pietro Perugno, and Domenico Ghirlandaio, that as I said before, he was the first and main influence that Michelangelo got inspiration from. Works like Drunkenness of Noah, Ignuri, The Brazen Serpent, The Crucifixion of Haman, Judith and Holofernes, and David and Goliath. Michelangelo decided to paint the creation of Adam because it was part of one of the scenes from the book of Genesis, and which talks about God giving life to mankind. It said that what represents is God being taken by angels without wings that are carrying him covered in a drapery and other materials, to meet with Adam, who are stretching each other's fingers to make possible life for humans. There are different meanings and hypotheses for different neurologists and historians, but if you take a look at the shape of the drapery that God is covered on, you will be able to see the shape of a brain. So it represents that God is giving breath to Adam through consciousness. And it totally makes sense. This part of the brain is called the occipital lobe, and is responsible for sight, which has the relationship with consciousness of what surrounds us. The scarf right here looks like the vertebral artery, and this leg coming out like the pituitary gland. Some even say that the fingers represent the synapses, which is the part of the neuron to transmit the chemicals and electrical signals to each other. As the painting has survived more than 500 years over the pass of time, this gives us an idea of how popular the painting is, which has been used all over the world. Maybe not directly the picture, but maybe the event that is happening or the history of the painting. It's been used in commercials, movies, shirts, phone cases, clocks, memes, and in all kinds of products that you can imagine. You can even find parodies of the image. People have used it to make humor or make their product or service different and outstanding, meaning this painting has integrated in today's society. I think that it's a masterpiece, and my hypothesis about this painting is that God didn't give life to Adam, because the shape of the brain made me think that Michelangelo didn't exactly want to represent the scene of the book of Genesis. What this painting says to me is that Adam was already alive, because if you sit and think about it, we humans are the smartest and most advanced species of our planet. And also because if I was going to paint the first human being given life, I wouldn't paint him with his eyes open. The thing is that Michelangelo wanted to express the moment in which God made us be leaders of the earth. This is why he paints a hidden brain, because God instead is given intelligence, self-thinking, reflection, curiosity, philosophy, things that make us be who we are. And what I love the most about this painting is the tension of the moment that Michelangelo uses to leave his public with the curiosity of what is going to happen the moment they were going to touch their fingers. And in my opinion, this is a very smart strategy, because in a society that is going through cultural changes, people are so focused on it that Michelangelo decides to paint this image in which he knows that this will cause an excitement in people that will provoke them for wanting to see more of his paintings. This is definitely one of the first things we should show aliens when they come to Earth. The printing press. It was a very important invention during the Renaissance and in history. It was created by the German inventor Johannes Gutenberg. The press print at first was not used at all by the noble classes. To them, books made by hand were a sign of luxury, and the materials of the printing press were common in the lower classes. But this invention saved these classes. Now information was able to distribute to a much larger amount of readers, which as time passed, the numbers of them increased due to the education and knowledge that was spreading out. Flushing toilet. One of the most important solutions of the world to stop diseases. The flushing toilet was invented by John Harrington, godson of Queen Elizabeth I of England, in the 1590s. A way to effectively separate humans with their excrements. If this was invented in the 14th century, the population of Europe in the Middle Ages would have had less risk to catch the Black Death. But after this event, John realized that hygiene was a very important fact. Even though at first the idea didn't seem like much, but in the 18th century became very popular.